Welcome, everyone, to our final CSM Mastermind of 2022. I'm Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching training program. We are back for our monthly live webcast today, talking about becoming a trusted advisor. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the global leader in customer success professional development training, now with over 21,000 students from nearly 100 countries on our skills development platform. Our training programs are available in a variety of formats, from self-paced online learning to virtual instructor-led boot camps. We are running a special this month on next year's live instructor-led trainings, including our 12-week coaching programs offered in conjunction with the University of San Francisco and our 3-day boot camp. So we're offering you 23% off for 2023. That's good through December 31st. So if you've been considering attending our live programs, this would be the time to sign up. We also are we also are having to do a price increase next year, the first time in like 4 years. So definitely this is the time to sign up if you're interested in attending one of our live programs. Ashley is dropping a link into our program page and the coupon in chat. We are also looking for panelists to join us for our mastermind sessions next year. So if you are interested in participating and have something to say, Ashley's going to drop a link for a survey into chat so we can capture the topics that you're interested in. Find out more about our online learning and instructor-led training programs and workshops at successcoaching.co. The CSM Mastermind series is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success, regardless of the company that you work for, the scope of your role, or the sizes of the customers that you deal with. We aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. The schedule for our upcoming events can be also found at successcoaching.co. Click on the events tab at the top of the page to find out more. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is recorded and will be posting a replay along with the transcription on our website early next week. We will be taking questions later on during the webinar, so please don't be shy and use the Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to either ask or upvote a question. We are also broadcasting on LinkedIn Live and have somebody monitoring that feed. Thank you, Tracy. So if you have questions watching on LinkedIn Live, please post them and they will be relayed to us. Also, we love getting feedback during the event, but ask that you keep all commentary to the chat window. So questions, Q&A, commentary to the chat window. There's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. In this series, we focus on practical, real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from those practicing customer success on a daily basis. And to do that, we invite 3 panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. So without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do. And let's get started, as usual, in alphabetical order with Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. It's great to meet you here. I'm excited to be here as well. I am Chelsea Lua. I'm based in Utah in the U.S. I have been in client-facing positions for the past 10 years, a little over 10 years, with the last 6 years being primarily in customer success, account management. It's a fun role. It's exciting. So much to do there. But I am currently an enterprise client success manager with Go1. And Go1 is an ed tech company. So we do educational learning for businesses. And on the personal side, I have 2 little girls that keep me busy all the time and have me running around. So lots to juggle there. But I'm excited to dive in, and hopefully I can help in any roadblockers that you've got.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsea. You know, I forgot to ask in our prep call, how old are your kids?
I have 2 girls, and I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. So
8-year-old and
they
4-year-old.
are very busy.
Yes, I'm sure they are. And I have a 13-year-old girl, and it's been an interesting ride. with her. So awesome. Thank you. Thanks for making time for us today. Effie, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Effie Mansdorf. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Success at Adaptive Shield. I'm originally from New York. I live in Israel now. I've been in customer-facing roles for about 20 years, with the past 10 years or so in customer success. And I'm really excited to be here. And good luck with your 13-year-old, Andrew.
It's been quite the experience. She's an amazing kid. And I on a regular basis, I tell her how proud I am. And I say to myself, oh my God, I'm doing something right. Thank God. So yeah, very, very proud of her. Very proud of her. Thanks, Effie. Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, Cash.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cash Young. I am the Director of Customer Success at Articulate, which is an e-learning authoring tool. If you have ever taken an online training course, you probably have seen it. I live in Long Island, New York with my dogs, and I have been in customer success for a little bit over 10 years, particularly in SaaS. And I've built a lot of customer success teams from the ground up. So implementing not only strategy, but processes, I think are, things that I'm very, very familiar with. And I'm really excited to be here and talk to you all today. And I hope you all walk away from this with some really helpful insight.
Awesome. And you said you got 4 dogs. You got one who's the boss and 3 who are the muscle.
Yes, I call them my security detail. I have my very small Maltese who is in charge of the very large pitties that I have, and they're terrified of him, but it gets the work done. So
love it. Excellent. Once again, thank you all. We appreciate your time. Now let's get to the topic. In the business world, and especially within the realm of customer success, the best and longest lasting relationships are built on trust. Customers are looking to business with vendors that they can help them make long-term strategic decisions for their organization and reap the biggest benefits of their product or service offering, all in pursuit of achieving their corporate goals. Now, becoming a trusted advisor to your customers not only has advantages and benefits for them, but also for you as well. The entire dynamic of your relationship changes from the more transactional customer vendor relationship to that of a more strategic partnership. And although it doesn't happen overnight, building long-lasting relationships built on a foundation of trust is important for any CSM to learn how to do. So to get us started, let's define what a trusted advisor is from your perspective.
So, Andrew, I could jump in there.
Yes.
A trusted advisor, basically, you got to that status when you hear things like, I wanted your opinion on, what do you think about? These are very different questions of I'm trying to integrate my CRM, sort of less transactional stuff. The way to get there is really a combination of things, is knowledge of the industry you're representing for your solution or service, knowing best practices and use cases that are specifically related to your customer. And of course, the big R word, which is relationship. A customer wants to get value from their customer success manager, just like they do from the tool. And the way to get it is from those 3 things. And the outcome is when they do start seeking your opinions and your knowledge on all of these, on specific things relating to your solution or product.
Now, a big part of that is there's some traits, some skills, some actions that you need to be doing to move closer to trusted advisor status. This isn't something that you just show up and say, "Hey, I'm a trusted advisor," right? You don't label yourself that, and magically the customers just start sharing. So, what are some of those key traits, those key characteristics of a trusted advisor? Chelsea?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work. You're putting a lot in there with your clients. So I would say it's being reliable, being knowledgeable, like Effie was saying, and also taking a genuine interest in your client and their business and what they do is what's going to make the difference between you and someone else. I always try to get to know my clients on a teeny bit of a personal side, just so that I can be more relatable. And then also letting them know that, like, I am here for you. I want to be your strategic partner. I want to collaborate. I want to see you succeed, goes further than you would know. So I think, and also knowing that if you don't know the answer to something, people are okay with that. Your client's not going to say, oh, I can't work with you anymore because you don't know the answer. They understand. So just be open to that and be comfortable in knowing that if I don't know the answer, I will find it, but also following up on that and following through with that, because just saying that you don't know and then not finding the answer is going to lead you down a different path.
Yeah. Cash, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Chelsea said. And I think there's a couple of, threads I would like to pull out there. And she said, being reliable, I think that's really important. And having a genuine interest, being inquisitive, taking the time not only to do research on the company, their business, their industry, who you're specifically speaking to, but as Chelsea said, asking them those questions, what are their big initiatives? What's keeping them up at night? What are their challenges? Being confident builds credibility. So if you go in and you feel confident in what you know and how you can make that applicable to the customer's use case in their situation, that is also great. And what I will also say is it's really important to be objective and also to be realistic. Customers do not like it when you overpromise and underdeliver. Sometimes it is okay to say, hey, I'm not sure what the answer is, or I'm not sure if this is a solution that we can provide. And maintaining that level of honesty and transparency really does build a lot of trust as well.
Yeah, don't tell customers what you think they want to hear. Tell them what they need to hear.
Absolutely.
Right? And what I'm hearing is, and I'll talk about pulling threads out of that. I'm hearing a lot of these skills, these traits that are really active listening, right? That really important that you listen. And when you think about just the concept of active listening, which is something that we talk about quite a bit in our training, is about asking the right questions. It's about restating to confirm that we understand what's being said. And to what Effie let off with, it's about establishing a relationship, a channel of communication with your customer. So communication, active listening, being able to have conversations, peeling back the onion, understanding your customer, all super important. So we talked about some of the benefits of becoming a trust advisor. I heard stronger relationships. What else? What else are some of those benefits that you've all have experienced yourselves in your roles of when you've achieved trusted advisor status with customers?
So I could give an example of sort of one of the indicators that I've had. So I had a customer who was looking to hire for her team. And one of the main roles of this new hire would be to use our solution. So she came to me and asked me to be part of the hiring process and interview her as part of the hiring process there. So not only did I know that our solution was really embedded in their day-to-day, but it also showed that they looked at us as really that trusted advisor, enough so to involve us and collaborate with us in order to hire their own team members. So I think that an example of that is really shows sort of the outcome of what you can achieve by getting to that status of the trusted advisor.
And in that case, what you're doing is you are actually helping to bring somebody on board who is going to drive adoption of your own product. I love that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a CSM's dream. How much turnover have we experienced in our lives? And we look at the new hire and we're like, oh my gosh, what a XYZ. I mean, this helps us as well achieve adoption and know that we're going to achieve long-term success with the customer.
Yeah, I've been in that situation myself as well, where I've been brought in for highly technical solutions, but I've been brought into the hiring process. and have definitely played a part in who is being hired, because, and I'm taking the perspective of this person could use our product, so we better make damn sure that they're a good fit, rather than, you walk in and say, okay, who's gonna own this, and they just choose, okay, who's got the short straw, right? And it's a crapshoot, right? Yeah, totally. I love that. What about so and that's great. I love that. It is, so that's a huge benefit of becoming a trusted advisor. You put yourself in a position where you can do something like that has a positive impact on driving adoption. What about and that would actually be more value, I would say, to your customer as well. So that's a win-win. What about revenue? What about more revenue for your business? Chelsea?
Right. Revenue is a huge piece, right? I mean, that's why we're all here and we have our jobs. But I think that when we've achieved that trusted advisor level, we're able to actually ask for those referrals, because they're talking to their friends, they're talking to their colleagues, they may go to another company and they're going to think, oh, I remember Chelsea and I worked with her and she was so helpful to be able to help me be successful, right? So asking for referrals is something that not only we feel more comfortable with, but they'll also feel more comfortable providing for us if we are that trusted advisor.
And I think being a trusted advisor is incredibly important in terms of generating revenue, because CS is a value add. It is something that we provide as an additional service, not that, it's actually a service, but as an additional service to our customers alongside the technology or the tool or the product that they're using. And I think that's one of the things that really sets us apart from a lot of the operational teams at the company, is that we're here to listen to you, understand what your objectives are, and align that with the functionality in our product. I mean, if you think of something as basic as Netflix, right? Netflix has an algorithm. They know what you like. They make suggestions, but you still spend minutes or hours, if you're me, scrolling through, try to figure out what to watch. Imagine if that algorithm was a concierge and there was a human that you could talk to and say, hey, I kind of feel like this. Maybe I want this actor in it. And they said, this is the movie you want. Like, that would be amazing. And we'd probably pay extra for that. So that's sort of the way that I see CS, is that it is driving an additional value. And when you establish that relationship, it has a very, very positive impact on your revenue.
I'd also like to, sorry.
No, I was going to say that's a $1 billion idea. Where do I sign up for that? I want to be able to talk into my Apple TV and go, I feel like watching Adam Sandler and, in a comedy and, or what have you. Yeah.
You know what, Andrew, we'll talk about this later.
Okay. Sorry, Effie, go ahead.
I was just going to expand a little bit on that and propose something that's not so traditional in the way we think of outcomes of being trusted advisors. We always think about, like, everyone, truth, like, they said it right, revenue, advocacy, all these great things. I would also propose another sort of look to it. And that is the freedom and the luxury of delivering bad news and making mistakes. When a CSM achieves that trusted advisor status, it allows the customer to develop enough trust that they're a little more open for mistakes either made by the CSM themselves or from the company. Same thing for delivering bad news. We all have to do it. Think of those customers that we have achieved that status. Delivering that bad news comes a lot, it's a much easier pill to swallow for the customers when it's delivered by someone they trust and someone they have that relationship with. So we do tend to think of all the positive outcomes. This is also a little bit of a positive outcome, but with a negative twist to it.
I love that. You definitely, your customers are more forgiving. And I used to, and it's funny, before customer success was the thing, but even before the subscription economy, one of the strategies I used to coach my teams on constantly was, I need you to under promise and over deliver, right? Because every time we under promise and over deliver, don't tell the customer what you think they want to hear. Tell them the reality and maybe even pad that a little bit. Every time we meet or exceed those expectations, we get a little credit. we get some credit, and we should store that credit, right? Because at some point, something's going to go off the rails because nothing ever runs smoothly. And at some point, something's going to break, or we're going to have to deliver bad news. And you know what? That's going to land a lot softer if we have those credits that we built up, right? That's huge. Just a reminder, we've already got one question, so please feel free to ask your questions. We'll get to questions here in probably about 10 minutes or so. So I love that. I love that you brought that up. Love that you brought that up, Effie. And I know also, Cash, when we were meeting on Monday, you there's one thing about delivering bad news, but also kind of a nuance of that is being able to push back. And you brought that up, I think, during our prep call, right? Being able to push back, do something different if you've got that level of relationship with your customer.
Absolutely. And I think that goes, back to what I was saying earlier about being objective. Sometimes there are instances in which what the customer is trying to achieve just isn't possible, or it's not feasible, or maybe the timeline that they have in mind is just, not at all reasonable. And I think, to Effie's point, where you're in a situation where your customer trusts you, you can say that. And you can, to what you mentioned, Andrew, you can kind of under promise and over deliver and set realistic expectations, because at the other end of that is disappointment and distrust, right? So if I say, hey, yeah, you want to do this really, really intricate implementation, we can do that. We can get that done in a week. No, because when it doesn't get done in a week, and then a week later you find out that only 50% of it is possible, you've lost all of those credits, as you so wonderfully put it. So being able to say to a customer, hey, I don't necessarily know if this is possible, and if we were to pursue it, it would take X amount of time. I just want to be honest with you and set that expectation. Obviously, they will appreciate that a lot more than to being told what they want to hear and having it not work out.
I think it's one of those sort of rookie mistakes that I see with a lot of CSMs who are starting out. They mistakenly believe that being that yes person is what's going to make the customer happy. And quite the opposite is true. Pushing back, offering alternative solutions, saying no in the right way is really one of the paths to achieve that trusted advisor status. No one is paying for a product or service so they could be right. They want to pay for a product or service so they could implement or get results for the best of their ability. And pushing back is a big part of it. And being that one who advises how to get to that role, sometimes and many times, involves pointing out perhaps misconceptions of how something should be implemented, moving sort of best practices from what a customer has internally to thinking alternatively. And that is something that once a customer success manager does, will definitely lead to that path of trusted advisor.
Yeah, pushing back can get you that much further down the road, right? Because you're like, wait a minute, based off what I understand about your business, based on what I know about this domain and our product, I actually don't think this is a good direction to go.
Absolutely.
Right, I would agree with that. And just to add to it, when you're starting out in CS, sometimes like Evie was saying, when you are that yes person, it's hard to walk that back. But it's not impossible. But it's better to set those boundaries up front and be transparent and just be okay with saying, these are our boundaries, and it looks like I need to hold you to these accountable for this as well. But of course, in like a very professional and manner. Don't want to upset your client further, but you also want to make sure that you're setting those guidelines up front so that you don't have to walk that back. Because it's harder to overcome once you've already gone into saying yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about as far as obstacles or challenges that you face in being a trusted advisor. We talked about don't being a yes person, and I know there's a question in Q&A about quotas and negotiation, but something that I always am concerned about when you're trying to earn the trusted advisor relationship, which is and it's something that I have real heartburn over when people say, "Hey, should customer success be responsible for negotiating terms and conditions of a deal?" And so I firmly believe that customer success is responsible for creating the environment for expansion to occur, environment for renewal to occur. But this, I think that there's a lot of risk for customer success managers that are responsible for driving negotiations of renewals and expansion revenue. There's a lot of risk in that, in potentially damaging that trusted advisor relationship. What do you all think about that?
Sorry, I'm going to jump in. I know we all went off mute there real quick. I think that this is definitely one of those things that it can go both ways, but I think that the best is in the manner of what you're saying and negotiating in. Because if you're just saying, this is your price increase and here it is, just relying on your relationship for them to understand it, then I don't think it will go over very well. But if you're having the conversation and letting them know, this is why we are expanding, or this is why we're going to increase these prices, it's a lot different and it goes over a lot more smoothly if the client knows and that message is coming from their trusted advisor.
I would definitely. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Cash.
I would definitely agree with that. I would say I have worked most of my CS career as someone who does manage negotiations, and my team does now as well. And I think to Chelsea's point, it really is about how you position what it is that you are trying to potentially upsell them on, or, if there is a price increase, and it never really starts with the price, it starts with the value, right? Like kind of like my Netflix analogy. I explained that to you way before I said I was going to charge you for it. And you were like, yes, I want that. So it's really with leading with the value, aligning it with their goals and their strategies. The other thing is, I will say that I've noticed, and I think this is happening more and more recently, is that the person that you were talking to on your day-to-day is not necessarily the person you're going to end up negotiating with. So 9 times out of 10, there's a contracts management admin or procurement person. And so you do get to develop a different sort of relationship with that person, where you don't really need to be a trusted advisor. You just need to be really, really great at negotiating. And that does not at all impact the relationship that you have with your day-to-day contact. And I think one of the best things that is always going to be great in terms of being a CS person is that if you truly are the person who is the product expert and is able to build that bridge between what the product does and what the value is for the customer, then you actually should be really great at negotiating, because you probably have the best things to say about why that customer should spend more money with you.
Yeah. You've proven it. And if they do trust you, it makes the negotiation that much easier. Yeah. And when you're dealing with the procurement team, I'll always expect, and I used to always embed 5% into my pricing, that they want their 5%, their pound of flesh. And so, the easiest way to deal with procurement is just to, front load that 5% and say, okay, I'll take 5% off. Right. Then they're happy. You're happy. They feel like they've accomplished what they need to accomplish. I've been using that strategy for a long time. Effie, anything to add?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think the whole idea behind sort of the inconsistencies between needing to achieve a quota and becoming that trusted advisor, sometimes the two may clash. You may have to be forced to basically upsell or cross-sell something that you don't think is appropriate, which could be an argument against CSMs having a quota. I will say that it really, really depends. There's no sort of one size fits all, blanket statement. If that was the case, then we wouldn't be talking about this. It's such a huge topic within customer success. We want to be talking about it. But I do believe that sometimes it may hurt the status because the KPIs are not measured against doing what's right for the customer. And as a result, being a trusted advisor and just hitting your numbers.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables, right? There's the compensation, incentives drive behavior, right? So how exactly is compensation How exactly is compensation managed? How are the incentives managed? I also think that there's a I 100% believe that customer success managers need to own a number, right? But it's a sustaining revenue number and maybe a little bit of upside. But once again, is your job to maintain, maybe enhance a little bit? And is that negotiating? Is that kind of creating the environment for the renewal, the expansion to occur? And by doing that, that's suggesting solutions. And like you said, there's lots of different variables. And quite frankly, it could be you could have a lot of different variables within your own book of business, right? Hey, you know what? Most of these customers, I do want sales or an account manager to come in and negotiate this stuff. But I do have really good relationships with this other set, my top tier accounts, where I've established trusted advisor relationship. I'm going to leverage that trusted advisor relationship to basically say, okay, here's what I'm suggesting you should do, and here's the value you're going to get. And by the way, it's going to cost X. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But it can vary from company to company, from team to team, from segment to segment, from even customer to customer. So one last question that I have, one last thing I want to throw out there before we get to the Q&A, and we've got about half a dozen questions right now. Just a reminder, if you got any questions, throw them in the Q&A or upvote the questions that you see there, and we will get to those shortly. Is trusted advisor status relegated to just high touch accounts?
Absolutely not.
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely not. I think it's a different strategy when you have a high touch account. I mean, that goes without saying. It's a high touch. You have a lot of touch points personally with a customer, but there are a lot of one-to-many activities that a CS organization can do to establish that trust. It could be through community boards, through product updates and use cases. Again, a one-to-many situation. The way that you're processing and getting the information may be different from a low touch to a high touch, but you're still getting that value from, as a trusted advisor. And it could be a trusted advisor from the company if it's a little bit more low touch and there's no CSMs involved, or just from the CSM who's inviting a customer to all these activities. So it could absolutely, definitely be achieved. And I think in that situation, there has to be a little bit more collaboration with either product marketing or product themselves. There's a little extra aspect to doing that.
To jump in there, I would say a big part of that is being consistent. Because with those low touch accounts, yes, you're not talking to them weekly or biweekly, but being consistent with your QBRs, your quarterly business reviews, and making sure that they know that you are there in between. I think that's the biggest part, and maintaining that trusted advisor role with those low touch accounts.
And to add on, I would say, to be a trusted advisor, I think it's more in the quality of the work that you produce as opposed to the quantity of interactions that you have. If there is a customer that you only get to speak to a few times a year, those are the amount of times that you have to drive value. So you have to make sure that those 4 meetings a year are going to be meetings they look forward to, meetings they gain value out of, and meetings where you are coming prepared with recommendations, questions, strategy that are really going to push the needle. And I think those can actually be more difficult to prep for when they're lower touch, because you don't have that, consistent interaction to fall back on every single time. So like I said, I think it's more so, to Chelsea's point, being consistent and being reliable, but making sure that in the times that you do get to interact with those customers, that you are truly, truly driving value.
I love that. Preparation. So
Absolutely.
important. Preparation and value, right? I want to make sure that if we're going to provide value to this customer, we need to prepare. But in the low touch world, besides that, low touch or even no touch, it's that mindset of we as an organization, we as a company need to establish trust with our customers. So it goes beyond that one-to-one between the CSM and the customer. It's really the trust that the customer organization has with your organization. And there's so many different things that actually fall outside of our control in that case, right? For example, if a customer happens to, fall 30 days behind on a payment, is the accounting department picking up the phone and calling them and being nasty, right? Right? Or are they just trying to figure out, are they taking a softer approach, right? Because that could kind of erode some of that. There's a lot of moving parts outside of, especially in a lower touch or no touch type of situation, a lot of parts outside of what we think about traditionally in customer success we need to look at.
Right. I would say with that, clients definitely understand our internal relationships as well. So being able to have a trusted advisor role within internally is also so important, because clients see through that. If you are not aligned on your calls or aligned with someone else that they're trying to work with, such as finance, the clients are going to see that and they're going to feel that, and that's going to impact your relationship with them as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and this is why we all, we're huge fans of this notion of customer success for everyone. We think everybody in an organization needs to have some exposure to what customer success is, why it's important, the impact it has on your organization. You can see a lot more of that out of us next year. Why don't we get to some questions? Our first question comes from Nick. Nick, thanks for your question. Nick asks, can you give some tips on how to achieve that trusted advisor status with customers that are enterprise level but like to be a low touch account? Looks like Cash, you wanted to jump in first on this. Cash, what have you got to say to Nick?
Yes, this happens quite a bit. And in my enterprise segment, I would say, number one, for these types of customers, the first interaction you have with them is going to be incredibly critical, because you're going to have to get a lot of information out of them. And I think, number one, the first thing to do is respect the fact that this customer wants to be low touch. That is the bare minimum thing that you can do. Respect that, hear it, accept it. And then in your effort to understand that more, ask them, what communications are they interested in receiving, and when are they interested? Like, what is the cadence and agenda that they're interested in interacting with you? Is it quarterly? Do they want a business review? Are they cool with like monthly check-ins? Like, what exactly is their level of interaction that they would really need, and adhere to that. It might be that they only want to do a business review once a year. That is going to be a very important business review, and you should hold them to it. But all the communications that build up in between that are going to have to drive the value to get them to commit to that bigger meeting. It might be that maybe they don't like some of the marketing emails that are going out, and they're subscribed to all this stuff and it's all noise and it gets lost in the mess. All you have to do is say, hey, maybe you take over that communication. Hey, these are the things that we've sent out in the last couple of weeks that I think you're interested in. I've curated it for you. Let me know if you want to talk about them. And then you're able to repurpose something that already exists, customize it, and present yourself as someone who is communicating with them because you have insight for them, because you have information that they've requested and said is relevant to them. And you are now providing your insight, possibly sharing a little bit of strategy, and letting them know that you're respecting their wishes, but you're still available to them. So I think for those customers, like I said, respecting the low touch and just figuring out what exactly they want to hear and when, and coming up with an account plan to address that.
So what you're saying is I shouldn't try and force a one-size-fits-all strategy on all my customers?
No, you shouldn't. It's not a good idea.
Okay, good. Let me write that down.
Oh my gosh, Cash, I was nodding my head when you said the whole respect part. I think that's another thing that a lot of maybe poorly run CS organizations tend to push on. You have to meet every X cadence and you have to keep in touch. And I think many of us here have also been customers ourselves, and we know that sometimes having a cadence is just not valuable to us. And I think being a customer, by the way, has made me a better CSM, understanding what it's like on the other end, but definitely not forcing is so true. I would advise on a little tip. of how to maybe get that customer to perhaps meet you despite their requests, which is always deliver value and use cases that are extremely relevant to them. So you may want to send them an email saying, we developed this new feature, and I remember how you said that you have XYZ, and this feature can help in this way. And then add your Calendly or Chili Piper or whatever link to that email, and that puts it in their cart. You could set this up if you want. If you don't want, that's also cool. But I tend to do that myself a lot with many of the communications that I send out. I'm not going to force you to meet, but it's open and it's there, and you could set it up if you want.
I love that. That's a great tip. Chelsea, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say tying it back to that conversation, like Effie was saying, is what's really going to tie that in there for them, because we are receiving so many emails on a daily basis that we don't have time to go through every single one and see what I think is going to be valuable in that. But if you're sending something and saying, hey, I remember you said this, and I think that this would be valuable for you or something that you should look into, then that's going to tie it back into that for them. But I think also asking if what you are sending to them is valuable to them. Did you get something out of that? Because I don't want to keep sending things that you don't see value in to bombard our email inboxes like we do. So I think after sending something, it's very important to ask if they did see the value in that.
Yeah, I like that. Otherwise, you'll end up in the circular file.
Right.
Which doesn't help. And that these days is automated, so they don't even see the next set of them. So that's a great suggestion. Nick, thank you for the question. Cash, can you hit done on his question for me so that moves? Awesome. So let's see. Shivy, thank you for the question. Shivy asks, talking about trusted advisor when a client has transitioned from one CSM to another. If the previous CSM leaves the organization, how do we make sure we get their trust and provide similar services with personality that the client is used to before? And it looks like Effie, you wanted to jump in on this out of the gate.
Sure. So transitioning from one CSM to another is what I'm about to say also applies to a customer turning over as well. It's a brand new relationship. You had to break up before, and you have to somehow start from scratch. But the advantage in this case is that you have a lot of history and background. And if you have any good sort of tools to support you with, you're coming not from scratch. This isn't like a kickoff. So if you're well prepared and you don't start from scratch with a customer, because I think that's one of the more frustrating things, is that here's this new CSM. I don't know who she is. I have to now start from scratch and tell her all of the things that happened. If you come prepared to that meeting and say, this is what I understand happened until now. This is what where we are right now. This is where we are. This is what I suggest. And I think transitioning from one CSM to another is a wonderful opportunity to sort of reassess the path that the customer is taking. You have the luxury of also asking certain questions that maybe someone who has been with the customer for 2 years, it's already too late to ask. So really preparation and coming already out of the barn already with some suggested values can be really helpful in this case.
I love that. I've coached my team members before to basically create a customer dossier, right? And we've even gone as far as developing standard customer dossier forms. Here are the things that you need to make sure that you understand about this customer. And if you have a chance to, especially for larger customers, if somebody's leaving the organization, the best case scenario is that person is actively involved in handing that customer over to you, and they've created a dossier, and hopefully, and they may have, hopefully they've introduced you and you're easing into that. But for in the absence of that, creating your own dossier with what information you can come up with, and going wherever you need to go, your customer success management system, your Salesforce, your sales system, go into the original account executives to collect all that information up. And then once again, to your point, be prepared, showing up and saying, here's what I understand. I know there's some gaps here. Don't tell the customer what you think they want to hear. Hey, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to better understand where you guys are at. And you have to, it's not only the prep on what they're doing with your product. You need to show up knowing what they do. Why are they here? What are they in business for? Who are the people? It's prep across the board.
Yeah, and these days, most of the tool stacks that customer success teams have are either some meeting recording applications, or even as a basis, some sort of history of emails. So even if there wasn't that handover, which happens sometimes, you could still go into all of that documentation that you have and prepare yourself. And talk to the salespeople, talk to the product people, those who do interact and are still consistent in that customer relationship. You can also draw information from them as well.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Cash, Chelsea, you got anything to add? Any other suggestions?
I was going to say, I think to Effie's really, really valuable points, when you're going into these transition meetings or emails, if you could borrow some of that credibility from the person before you, as Andrew said, and get them to be involved, but also, asking questions for further understanding and confirmation, as opposed to asking very general, open-ended questions, I think is a really great way to build credibility, because as Effie said, it's going to show that you've prepared, you've done some research, you've at least made an effort to understand what this customer is going through, and then you're just trying to fill in the gaps, as opposed to them having to feel like they're kind of going through onboarding all over again. So
yeah, that's the last thing we want. We don't want to be asking the same questions that they've already answered. That's incredibly frustrating. Awesome. Shivy, thank you. Shivy, thanks for your question. Thank you, Effie, for moving that along. So next question comes from Keely. Keely asks, in situations where sales and CS are separate departments, what are some best practices to use during that handoff to help with shifting trusted advisor status from sales to CS? I don't know if sales actually has trusted advisor status or selling something, but that's my own perspective. I personally, I think this in a customer dossier, there needs to be some sort of process. There needs to be some sort of information handoff. You can't be showing up asking the same questions that the customers already answered. When you show up understanding why the customer is there, validating the information that they've already shared, asking the questions of the things that you don't know, you begin to move down the path toward trusted advisor status, because you were prepared, because you understand who the customer is, what they're doing, what kind of value that they're trying to get out of this. Even better is if sales has figured out, how does this solution that we have proposed relate to some overarching corporate objective that they're trying to achieve. Right? All of and you show up knowing that and repeating that, people are going to say, wow, these guys know what they're doing. And I've personally seen huge multinational, like Fortune 10 companies, right? I've seen Fortune 10 companies that completely screw this thing up. They screw up the handoff between sales and post-sales. And the only reason why they're there is because of their logo. And I've seen, but the customer is just frustrated. And I've seen small little startups absolutely nail this and make themselves seem a lot more professional, a lot larger, a lot more organized than they really are.
Just to add to that, meet with your salesperson before the handoff is actually done to the client. Ask the questions to that salesperson and build relationships with your sales teams. Because like I was kind of saying before, clients see through things very quickly and they understand if there is a disconnect there. So build those relationships with your sales team as well. So that is more of a seamless process. They know what questions you're going to ask on that next handover. They come prepared, you're prepared, everyone is prepared for that handover.
And I think Chelsea and Andrew have identified some really, really great things that, the CS and salesperson can do. As a company, CS should be part of the talk track for sales. Like sales should be letting the customer know even before the point of sale, like you are going to work with this person who is going to listen to you and understand your goals and make recommendations. And like I said earlier, CS is a value add. So this should be something that they're getting the customer excited about, that they're, letting the customer know, hey, you're not going to be alone on this journey. It won't be me, but there's a whole other team with the skill set that's really going to, work with you and partner with you to make sure you achieve your goals. So I think it starts early with establishing that relationship and really the salesperson letting the customer know what they bring to the relationship and then where the customer is going to move forward in the journey and how that handoff is going to take place. And then it comes into the knowledge exchange, potentially doing that transition together and really making sure it feels seamless for the customer.
There is nothing that will grease the skids of a churn more than a bad handoff. You have a bad handoff. It's not just, I don't know all the information. You cast doubt in the mind of your customer at the very point where we need them to be engaged and excited. If they show up to that kickoff call and you're asking a bunch of questions that they've already answered and you don't seem to be prepared and you haven't done your research and you have, whether it's by your own fault or by the fault of your sales team, your customer is immediately going to pause and say, did I make the right decision? And what that's going to do is it's going to lead to disengagement in the process. And when the customer becomes disengaged in the process, then driving adoption and getting them to a point of first value is going to take longer. And the longer that it takes for them to achieve value and to drive adoption, the harder it's going to be for you to get them to see the value that they need to justify continuing to work with you. So we found in the years prior to rolling out our program, when we were doing consulting, we found more times than not when a customer came to us and said, hey, can you help us? We have a churn problem. More times than not, when I say more times than not, and I've said it before on these webinars, like we're talking like 70-75% of the time, it was because of something that was fumbled between the sales and the post-sales team. So that handoff, Keely, super important. If there's anything that I would double down on right out of the gate, is that process, understanding who does what. Like Cash made a great point, getting an understanding. It's something that we talk about all the time with our customers, getting customer success introduced either conceptually near the end of the sales process or actually physically engaged. We have an outcome-based selling methodology that actually Aaron's teaching this week as well, where we the idea is to engage customer success in the latter stages of the sales cycle so that transition from sales to post-sales is a smooth one. So super important. And if you're having churn issues, if you're having retention issues, first place you want to look is that. It's right there. Awesome. Keely, thanks for your question. Our next question comes from, and we're 4 minutes to the hour. So just a reminder, we will go as long as 15 minutes past the hour. If we still have questions, we'll go as long as we can and answer everything that we can. So if you can stick around for an extra roughly 15 minutes, we will still be here. Sienna asks, how do you recommend balancing being the trusted advisor and expansion goals or quotas that you may be responsible for in the business as the CSM? I know we kind of touched on this a bit earlier. Effie, you actually wanted to jump in on this. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to Sienna's question here?
Right. So when you do have some sort of quota that you have to fulfill, the best way to do it is just like you do everything else, just like you sell a feature within your solution or product. It's the same thing. Just make sure that it's not done in a salesy way. One of the great things that we as customer success managers is we do very sort of, we do what we do best. And the lagging outcome of, the lagging indicator is the renewal or the expansion or the upsell. So if we're really showing value throughout the customer life cycle, you don't have to come to the end and say, hey, you want to buy this new product? You're preparing them throughout the time, throughout the whole time, and showing them the value for the past year or whatever it is, 6 months. And that will lead to that upsell or expansion, wherever it is, as a result, in a sort of natural way.
Creating the environment for it to occur.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of creating the environment. We're going to deliver the value. We're going to demonstrate the value, and we're going to disseminate and distill the value to all the people that need to understand that. We talk about that in our level 2 for our renewals course, right? It's all about that. There's no secret, there's no special secret sauce, easy button. It's just freaking do what you said you're going to do and ensure the customer's getting value. Right.
Yeah.
And you mitigate the risk of something negative happening.
And we're constantly selling. I mean, CSMs are selling from the minute of the handover. We're selling that, we know the background information. We're selling during kickoff that you made the right decision, and look how great we know your use case. We're selling it through adoption. We're constantly selling. We're just doing it in a very different way than salespeople do.
Yeah, I think that's because a lot of CSMs cringe. Sell is a 4-letter word, right? And so a lot of CSMs cringe when they think, I'm not a salesperson, but you kind of are. And maybe we just got to adopt a different way of a different term, or is it positioning? I don't know, but people seem to cringe. I 100% agree with you, though. We're constantly selling. We're selling the concept. We're selling the idea. We're selling the value. Awesome. Sienna, thanks. I'm sorry, Cash, Chelsea, did you have anything to add to that, to this balancing being the trusted advisor with quotas?
I think the only thing that I would add is that this might be a really, really great time for you to rely on some data. And we go into our renewal conversations and we look, so we upsell customers on seats. And so that's a pretty easy win. If I can see that you've grown 20% this year, I can assume you might grow 20% next year. Those are numbers. They're telling truth. So whether it's, it's adoption or usage, or if the customer has given you any insight as to some achievements that they've made on their end with your product, having some numbers to show them that aren't just actual prices might be helpful as well. And this is a situation in which I would definitely recommend making sure that you are tracking some sort of quantitative numbers so that you can show those back to the customers and kind of align that with, whatever quota it is that you are trying to hit.
Awesome.
I would agree with both things that were said. I think value is the number one way to sell, and just reminding your client why they purchase in the first place and how it will benefit them. Because as soon as they see that, it's going to be good from there. Because we can tell them all day long, this is going to be great for you. This is going to be great. But they really need to understand that and see that before any sell is going to be done.
And you need to make sure that the value that's been delivered is not just being demonstrated to the people that you typically work with, but the people who are making the decisions on whether you're going to expand or renew. So, your key stakeholder may understand the value that's been achieved, but the CFO, who doesn't use the product on a daily basis, actually is the ultimate decision maker. And if you haven't done a good job disseminating that value out to people like those key stakeholders on the fringes who can make or break your renewal, then you need to figure out how do I get that information. And one of the great ways, and I always recommend this with my coaching students, one of the great ways of getting that value known by the CFO is having your key stakeholder deliver that message and make them look like the smartest person at that company for embracing your solution. right? And so what you do is you get your message of the value that your solution is delivering to the company, but it's delivered through this vessel that is the key stakeholder that ends up raising their their standing in the organization, right? So it's a win-win. This is not about, oh, hey, I did that as a CSM. No, this is about your customer. Play the ego card, right? Play the ego card whenever you can. It's an incredibly powerful card to play.
Right. I always, just to play to that, I tell my clients, what can we do to get you promoted? What can we do to help you look good? Yes. Let's focus on you, awesome. Which then gets us involved in other departments and up to those key decision makers.
Yep. And when they get promoted out of that organization to another organization and they bring you in, right?
Exactly. Full circle, right?
We see that all the time in our business. We see people that we've gone through our training, have succeeded in their roles, go to another company, and they're like, hey, we got to bring these success coaching guys in because they really up-leveled us. So I've got some of our customers have been at 2-3 different organizations that just keep bringing us in. They land somewhere, they're like, hey, let's bring these guys in. So it's an awesome place to be. It's an awesome place to find yourself in. And it's incredibly rewarding because you're like, okay, we're doing something right? We're delivering value enough that this person is taking us into other opportunities. Sienna, awesome. Thank you for the question. Effie, if you can hit the done button. So let's see. Christy, thank you for your question. Christy asks, how would you suggest going into negotiations as a middleman without the authority to approve or offer anything? And it looks like Cash, you want to jump in on this.
Yes, this actually happens quite a bit on my team. I will say, number one, the best thing that you can do is to get those approvals or offers done beforehand. So going to whoever it is, your manager, or I don't know if you have procurement, and saying, what is our bottom line? What is the lowest we're willing to go? What are we willing to offer them? And coming to that conversation with a couple of offers that you already know off the bat have been approved by finance or whoever. So you don't have to waste time. And I think being the middleman is not necessarily always bad. I do think that for the most part, if you've already gotten to know your customer and they understand where you sit in the organization, they probably understand that, right? But I think where it becomes disruptive is that it takes a long time. You have to go back, you have to get the approval, you go back to the customer, they go to their person. So I think if you could come to the table with a couple of things like, hey, my manager is willing to give you 20% off, so I'm going to start at 5 and I'll work my way up. And you already know what your manager's bottom line is and what you have to play with. That's pretty much the easiest way to do it. I would also recommend that you make sure the person that you're negotiating with is also a middleman, because I definitely understand how overwhelming it can be to be talking to someone who does have the authority on the customer side, and then you have to go back to someone else. So if you can really maintain it, just you're negotiating with someone who's also going back for approval, that can help the conversation be a little bit easier. And then I can't speak for every other leader, but engage the decision maker if you need to. Like if you know that procurement person's going to be on the call, if you can get someone from finance or your leader to join that call and just knock it out right there, like I think that's a really great opportunity for you to ask for help and to kind of expose the customer to the internal operations of your organization and give them a peek under the hood so that they know that it's not just you back there, right? I think that's really, really, that could be helpful as well. So that would be my recommendation in terms of playing the middleman. I definitely think there is a way for you to position yourself in the middle, but still trying to get the best for the customer and being knowledgeable about what is possible for them to negotiate.
I like that point you brought up about you've got your business user, and then you're maybe dealing with, I mean, the way I interpreted that was you've got your key stakeholder in the business, but you're dealing with procurement. And if you're doing a good job and you're providing value and you're delivering that value and demonstrating that value, the conversations that you're having with that key stakeholder before you get on with procurement are going to be more along the lines of, at least from my experience, we're more along the lines of, okay, we got to talk to procurement. Here's what they're going to say. Here's how I need you to respond. I'm going to push back on X, Y, and Z. If you've got a good relationship with your customer, if you've built that trusted advisor status, you put yourself in a much better position to get your key stakeholder to push back on procurement and say, oh my God, stop, we're getting value, or give you some coaching on what we need to do in order to push this thing through quickly. More times than not, that's been the outcome for me.
I think also just being transparent in you are the middle person and setting those realistic expectations that you do have to go to someone else to get that, because there's nothing worse than thinking you're talking to the main person that's going to be deciding, and then finding out later that it's taking longer because they're actually going back and forth with another department. So just being transparent with your client and letting them know that, I think also.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Agreed. Awesome. Cash, hit done on that. We got one more question, then we'll wrap things up. From an anonymous attendee. How do you credit CSMs who achieve upsells without the aid of sales or AEs? Some of our customer expressed that they are happy with a few of our CSMs, do not wish to work with anyone else in the organization. In some cases, the CSMs establish the relationships with the key contacts or decision makers, while the sales AEs have not worked with the customers or have worked with them for a shorter period. The credit for upsells currently is credit to sales. What would you recommend to help to align both CSM and sales teams? We've used this concept of customer success qualified leads, CSQLs, and I would not only use it here, but we've used it in previous companies where there's an actual lead generated in whatever sales system you have that explains here's what was positioned, here's what we're proposing. So it's a kind of like a marketing qualified lead or a SDR type qualified lead, where that lead is then passed off to the sales team, and the sales team kind of rolls with it. But the customer success manager is the one whose name is attached to that lead, and they get credit for if that lead turns into a deal. So just like in other organizations, when an SDR qualifies a customer, and or qualifies a prospect, and that prospect turns into a customer, sales gets comped on that, but also the SDR gets something for providing a qualified lead that actually converts. Anybody else got anything to add? Any other ideas on that?
I definitely understand where that's coming from. I think there is a frustration where seemingly many times the CSM has had the established a relationship and did what they did, just like we mentioned before. They're selling throughout the whole life cycle, and boom, 2 seconds, an AE comes in, sign these papers, and leaves and gets all the credit. So it's definitely frustrating for sure. I am a big believer that whatever sort of structure and compensation structure is established, it has to be for both the the sales executive and the CSM. I think it creates a much better sort of success rate. For example, some organizations like to compensate. If you have like a farmer versus hunter, and maybe the CSMs just get are compensated on retention. I think it's very important that at least the sales executive gets compensated on that first renewal as well, because what that will lead to is qualified sales, right? You want to make sure you have the ideal customer profile, and if the salesperson has something in the game, and that they have to really do, really close very quality deals that are going to be renewing, they're more likely to create better fit customers. And the same thing goes for upsells and cross sells. If CSMs are compensated in some way for those cross sells, then the likelihood of the success rate of those cross sells will go up significantly. So I don't think in general it's fair to compensate one and not the other.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, incentive drive behavior. And the other thing we got to remember is that your sales team has a different compensation model. It's more a more heavily leveraged compensation model than your success team typically does. There's a lot of variables. You know, it's not as simple as, well, they get comped and we don't, right? You also need to remember that customer success teams are typically, in most cases, an 80-20 type of compensation model. 80% is your base and 20% variable, whereas in the sales side of the business, it's 50-50, right? So they got a lot more. They got a lot more on the variable side, so they have a lot more risk. They also, but with that comes a lot more upside. But I agree with you in that I think that if a customer success qualified lead comes in, right, which is the product of that customer success manager uncovering an opportunity, that they should get a piece. They should definitely get a piece. But that piece isn't going to be necessarily as big as sales piece. And whether that's right or wrong, that's probably a completely different. It's likely a completely different mastermind session.
And you do want to give some salespeople a little bit credit. You know, they're really good at negotiating. So maybe the CSM may close a deal for a certain amount. A salesperson can just take it and push it to the next level and maybe get a little bit more out of them. We are partners at the end of the day. You do have to give them a little credit that they're good at what they do.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous, or just anonymous, I guess. I can't even say Mr. We're at the time. We're at the end of the time that I've got for today, that we've got for today. I think it was a great conversation, but it's not what I think, it's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself, our guests, or Success Coaching. I want to thank my amazing panelists for spending the time with us and for the ideas, thoughts, insights, and best practices that you shared. And thank you once again for the prep call on Monday. One final note, great CSMs know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created the CSM Mastermind, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. We hope to see you again at our first event of 2023 on January 18th, when we'll be talking about leading effective meetings. Until then, make sure to make space for yourself and your mindset every single day, and have an amazing holiday season and a great new year, everybody.